given that your public life has been so strongly defined by free speech, the control over what can be said and what can be said and what can't ever be uttered, I wonder how you think this new movement, in particular the alliance that Bobby Kennedy and Tulsi afford the movement as it was prior to this amalgamation, I wonder where you see free speech in particular in terms of making America healthy again.
Well, it's obviously a wonderful opportunity for everybody to have stellar leaders and models at the helm of a movement like this. It's very exciting for me to see this, because I think that one of the concerns that people have had about President Trump is, I suppose, in some ways, the one-man show aspect of it. And it's so interesting to me to watch the people who are gathering themselves around them, how unlikely that is, what a revolutionary change that is. I mean, any one of the people, Gabbard or Kennedy or Elon Musk, the addition of any of them to the Trump team is quite the remarkable occurrence, but to have all of them show up basically at the same time, that's a real game changer, and it isn't obvious to me at all. And these are all people who've staked themselves out on the free speech domain, that's for sure, and at a substantial professional risk and reputational risk, and not only staked themselves out in that regard, but did it very successfully, and despite the risk, what would you say, gripped the opportunity that was associated with being persecuted on the basis of their outspokenness. And so that's a real hallmark of competence, right? To take an attack, especially a reputational attack, not to apologize, not to cringe and back off, but to transform it into an opportunity. And certainly, well, Musk, Tulsi, Robert Kennedy, they've all done that, and so that's so remarkable to see. It'd be lovely to see the Trump campaign shift to emphasize the strength of the team, too, because I also think that would go a long way to rectifying, well, it's a real opportunity, right? Because there are many people who are concerned, rightly or wrongly, about Trump's character, which has its rough edges, some of which are quite helpful, perhaps, let's say, on the international front, but to know that he's surrounded by people who are very strong in their own character and their own opinions, that are there to back him up, and also to counsel him wisely in a truly diverse range of directions, that's a wonderful thing practically. It's also an example of free speech and the free exchange of opinions in action, because every single person that I've named has their own opinions. They don't all agree. They put them forward very forcefully, and the indications that we have from the Trump campaign that that's welcome should go an awful long way to, what would you say, to satisfying the critics of Trump who are afraid that his more autocratic tendencies might get the upper hand. I don't see that happening. I certainly don't see any evidence for that, given what's happened around him in the last couple of weeks. It's really something remarkable. I don't think the political discourse is adjusted to the new reality of the Trump team, even within the team itself.
That's a really brilliant point, I think, actually, Jordan, because it's only that there's such an extraordinary asphyxiation in legacy media spaces that we're not seeing this new alliance celebrated more prominently. But your point that even the Trump campaign hasn't further embraced Tulsi Gabbard and Bobby Kennedy. Of course, there's been the appearances at various rallies, but you're right. It brings clarity to true diversity rather than the kind of superficial diversity that masks homogeneity at the heart of the Democratic Party movement. If you start to incorporate strong figures, strong leaders that, to your point, would be capable of leading a party themselves into a movement that's continually condemned. Why? Because they believe it foreshadows dictatorship, even though really dictators are generally a lot younger, don't have the institutional or indeed constitutional safeguards that this great country of yours enjoys. It's actually emblematic of real democracy, real collaboration. Tulsi, if I might ask, have you experienced in your interactions with Donald Trump a genuine spirit of collaboration? And, you know, to Bobby's earlier point, that you will be significantly engaged when it comes to the appointment of government officials, which must surely be a terrifying prospect to the apparatchik class that are about to be swept away in a tidal wave of, don't dare utter it, democracy. Have you seen that there is a genuine willingness to act upon the principles that we've been talking around here? Collaboration, empowerment.
I have, and it was actually the very first time that I met President Trump that I experienced this firsthand. He had just been elected in 2016. It was about 2 weeks after the election, just before Thanksgiving. And some people in his inner circle were very concerned about the neocons swooping in and implanting themselves in his team, and so they asked if I would literally, I forget what day of the week it was, I had just gotten home for Thanksgiving from Congress, and they said, would you get on a plane and come to meet President Trump at Trump Tower tomorrow to speak to him about foreign policy? Of course, I said, yes, let me get on a plane tonight, I'll be there tomorrow. Went and had about an hour-long conversation with then President-elect Trump about foreign policy. It was he and I, a one-on-one conversation in his office at Trump Tower that was very substantive. I'd never met him before. I didn't know what to expect. All I had seen was what the people in the TV say about him, and I was very pleasantly surprised at how focused he was on the issues. And he asked me very good questions. He listened intently when I answered. He had follow-up questions. And it was a very fruitful conversation that gave me some hope. I walked out of Trump Tower. They had the media pool down there in the lobby. And within 5 minutes, my cell phone started blowing up with messages and tweets and everything else with criticisms. Of course, the media put out, Tulsi Gabbard just walked out of Trump Tower and met Donald Trump. Criticisms from my former party that how dare I meet with President Trump, first of all, and criticizing me for humanizing him just by meeting him. And that said everything that I needed to know about their priorities. That they would put their own ego and their own political or partisan or power interests over taking the advantage to meet with any president-elect to share your insights. For me as a veteran, as a soldier, who's deployed multiple times to war zones, of course, I would be a complete failure if I didn't take the opportunity to meet with the president-elect to share my views and how we solve these problems and how we bring about peace. Fast forward to these last several weeks where I've had the opportunity to spend quite a bit of time with President Trump and his team, and what I found was, again, very encouraging. I found someone who, contrary to what the media has us believe, is not a sycophant who only surrounds himself with yes people, that he asks questions of those around him almost as baiting them to see, are they just going to be agreeable, or are they actually going to say what they think? Asking a question like, Jordan, you know, I really like your colorful suit choice. I think it's the best choice in the world. You agree with me, don't you? President Trump may have already made up his mind in this question, but he would be testing to say, are you going to say what you think I want you to say, or are you going to tell me how you actually feel? That was very encouraging. He encouraged discussion, encouraged different people around the room to share their views, and then, of course, he would make up his own mind and make his own decision on whatever the topic or the issue was, and that was very encouraging to see that collaborative atmosphere and that desire to have dissenting views in the room so that he could be well informed before making a decision on a particular issue. This is what, you know, and you talked a little bit, Jordan, about what's possible, and yes, of course, Bobby and I continue to be attacked, and those who've endorsed Trump, including Elon Musk and others, continue to be attacked by the propaganda media, and I would just say for me, and I won't speak for Bobby or anyone else, but for me, this is nothing new, but also, for me, it's not just not cringing and running away or shrinking into the shadows in fear or distaste. I embrace this opportunity. I embrace this opportunity because this isn't about me or Donald Trump or Bobby Kennedy or any one of us as individuals. This is a historic opportunity that I've never seen in my life in American politics, where we have a president who has shown he will not bend the knee to the permanent Washington establishment. They're terrified of him because he's a direct threat to the establishment itself, number one. Number two, he's coming in as a one-term president. He has one term to get a whole lot done. Hopefully, and it looks like if he's elected, he will likely have a majority in the Senate, which means you'll actually be able to get real legislation through Congress to do the things that we are talking about doing, and we will be able to help build that team to make it happen. When you know, I mentioned that quote from John Kerry at the World Economic Forum, the thing that he said about First Amendment being the biggest obstacle to them governing, he ended it, you saw that, he ended it by saying, that is what's on the line in this election. And we have to win and win big so that we can actually start to govern, i.e. control, once again. And he was specifically talking about the dangers of social media and the dangers of free speech on social media, and that the American people can just read anything, anywhere. This is what he's talking about. So when we say, and when President Trump says this election is about free speech, it's about our fundamental rights and freedoms, we're not the only ones saying that. John Kerry and the Democrat elite are saying this election is about free speech, and it's an obstacle to them and their power and their ability to control us. So once again, for those who may be undecided, don't take our word for it. Listen to John Kerry and what they will do if they win and win big.
Yeah, I was amazed he didn't burst into flames.
Yeah. And no one I mean, this is no surprise. It's the World Economic Forum. Not a single person uttered a peep to say, hold on a second. The First Amendment's an obstacle? They all sat there and slowly and quietly nodded along.
Yes, that kind of discourse is becoming eerily pervasive. There was a New York Times piece that said that, you know, we all love the Constitution, but couldn't we kind of abolish it and replace it with something more convenient for global tyranny? Yeah, that was the headline. Loquacious, a little long, lacking some of the punch of the New York Times of old, but at least there was a certain discernible clarity. And just to, also, I think that Donald Trump would like Jordan Peterson's jacket. Just to not let that.
I agree.